So I just bought a brand new lens for my Sony a7S III, and I have to tell you all about it because I'm just super impressed with it in terms of quality and price. For this super affordable lens, you get great optics, great shallow depth of field, a really lightweight lens, pretty good autofocus, and a full frame E-mount lens, which is just ridiculous in this package. So if you're looking for a lens around these characteristics, you should definitely check out this video because I think you're really gonna like what you see. So this is the lens in question. This is the Samyang 45mm f1.8 AF. And if you're thinking this looks like a really small lens, that's because it is. Just for comparison, this is a micro four thirds lens, and this is a Sony E-mount full frame lens. So as you can see, not very much difference there, which is just incredible that you can have a lightweight, high quality lens at this small for full frame cameras. Now we should also mention that this lens only costs $300 right now, which in comparison to other Sony lenses is just an insane bargain. The other ones cost upwards of $800 to $1,000, so $300 is a really good deal considering that it has good optics, is super lightweight, and it has autofocus, which is pretty rare in low-end lenses. And usually the autofocus is kind of iffy, but on this one, it's really good. Now I bought this lens on a bit of a whim. I saw it had pretty decent reviews on B&H and Amazon, but there weren't very many video reviews on YouTube, so I wasn't that sure about the quality exactly, but once I have it in my hands, I did some test shots. I was immediately super impressed by a lot of the features. So I don't really want to get into too many of the specs of this lens. That stuff's kind of boring. As you can see on the back, it's just Sony E-mount for full frame, and on the front it has just a lens cap, 49mm, super small lens, as you can see, with a focus ring right here in the middle. But that's honestly it about the lens. You just plug it into your camera and get shooting. So as you can see, I just switched over to the Samyang lens, and as you can see, the autofocus works really well. Right now I can see that there's actually a box around my eye. It's tracking my eye movement, which is just incredible for a lens of this price. If I get closer and then back away, you can see that the autofocus is really quick, efficient, and effective. It just works really well. It's crazy for a lens this cheap. Compared to a lot of the third-party autofocus competition, it's way better, and compared to even like a higher-end Sigma lens, it's pretty close in autofocus speed. So as you can see, not much to worry about there, it just works. So here's a little autofocus test I did with this lens. The transition speed is set to the highest possible setting on my a7S III, so that's why it looks a little bit jumpy between subjects, but I just wanted to show how fast it is. If you narrow that down, it will get a lot smoother and look really nice. But as you can see here, it's very accurate and quick in the autofocus, even though there is a little bit of breathing in the focus between close and foreground. It's really not bad, and it works pretty dang well. Now I'm currently shooting an f1.8, and you can really see how shallow the background is behind me. It just looks super nice. This lens is great for portraits and for close-up people work, basically where you want to blur out the background and get that more professional look. It looks really good. And talking about this lens optically, I've been very impressed so far. It's very sharp, even at f1.8 shooting like a landscape, which you should never really do, but I took a few shots like that, f1.8 landscape, and even the corners were surprisingly sharp. Of course, the middle is the sharpest and the edges fade a little bit, but I was really impressed by how sharp and consistent it kept throughout the whole image, even at a low f-stop. Now you'll notice a little bit in this shot, because I am outside and it's pretty bright, that there is a little bit of a vignette when you're shooting at f1.8. As you can see, the middle's brighter and the edges get a little bit darker, but it's really not bad, and if you stop down to f4, it's completely gone by there. So really not a big deal. If it's darker out, you're not going to notice, and I kind of like the look a little bit when you're outside. It softens the edges and brings more focus into the middle. Again, it's a cheaper lens, so you just expect things like that, but compared to other ones, it's really impressive actually. Now I do think the bokeh in this lens is quite nice, but as you can see in some of these shots at f1.8, it does have a bit of an oval shape around the edges, and it gets more circular, more curved around the sides. I don't really care about that. I don't think it's that important to have perfect circles all the way to the edges, but that is something you want to keep in mind if you're shooting at f1.8. And honestly, that's most about this lens. There's pretty much no chromatic aberration, maybe a little bit against really bright objects, but again, the optics are really good. Now I found two little downsides that I think you should be aware of. They're not a huge deal, but you should just know about them. The first is that there's no weather sealing on this lens, which isn't a huge deal to me, because in the past, like, this lens has no weather sealing. I brought it into deserts, into water, into rain, and never really had an issue even without weather sealing. So it's not a huge deal, but it's just something you want to be aware of. And then the second thing is that the minimum focus distance on this lens isn't super close. I think it's like 0.4 meters or something, so don't expect to get any macro shots. For most things, it's more than enough to get pretty close, but you just want to be aware of that, because if you're getting within like a foot or two of things, you're not going to be able to focus to them. Also, one more big thing optically is the fact that this lens is 45mm, which is a bit of a weird focal length. That's not super common, but I actually really like it. It was just kind of a random gamble getting this lens, but 45mm is such a nice focal length because often 50mm is just a tad too zoomed in, and 35 is sometimes just a bit too wide for what you want. So 45 is almost 50, but just a little bit wider. It's really nice. I think anyone using this lens would really like that focal length a lot. But anyway, that's about it on this lens. It's lightweight, it's cheap, and it works. So that covers pretty much everything you need with the lens, especially if you're just getting started and want lower budget stuff. And I think anyone getting this lens would be very impressed with the results. So you can see what this lens really looks like in action. I'm going to be adding some footage that I shot with it at the end of this video, just so you can get the best example and see if you want to purchase this really great lens. Anyway, thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, please give me a like down below. It really helps out a lot, and I will see you all next time.
You better stop.